Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome back to Watchbox Studios, and thanks for logging on. Well, guys, it's Monday Mailbag. We've survived our first snow of the year in our new Philadelphia home here at Watchbox. I'm here with Jason Mane of Watchbox in Gothburg. Guys, welcome. This is your show, your questions. We have a couple of questions from our viewers. We're also watching the live chat box, and I have to say, you guys spring into the chat box faster than I've ever seen these days. It's bewildering how many people join when we go live. So keep asking your great questions. Jason's going to be pulling them out of the chat box so we can dump our talking points and go live with your questions here. All right, first things first. Of course, Watch You Want moved from Miami to Philadelphia, now we get snow. Watch You Want became Watchbox, and now we get a quicker, faster, easier, and more fun website to use. So check out our new website at thewatchbox.com. I like the new arrivals page. It's where you get first crack at the newest watches that have just come in. Also, remember, when you're ready to sell your watch, Jason, you don't just sell them.
We buy watches.
That's right. So when you want to sell your watch, the fastest and easiest way to do it with many trade options is through Jason at thewatchbox.com. All right, enough of that. Let's go with wrist shots. What are you wearing tonight, Jason?
Today I am wearing the trusty 510. It's sporting a new strap as of this week, but 510, basically new iteration of the 111. I've had this watch for a couple months. It's a 8-day in-house movement, and just find it's the perfect mix of base Panerai and modern tech.
That's a really cool watch because I think that just breaks it down to what Panerai's always been all about. The Luminor, the Crown Guard, the old classic 44mm Betterini case, and a simple, like, one-glance dial. Meanwhile, I've got this crazy complication from a brand no one can pronounce. We'll just call them JLC. It's Chopard. I'm wearing my Amvox chronograph. I'm on an Aston Martin kick right now, so this watch gives me warm fuzzies. It's a vertical trigger chronograph, so you can see you tap the crystal to start the chronograph. You tap the crystal to stop the chronograph. And then when you haven't locked it out, it does have a lockout feature. You tap the crystal at 6 o'clock and you reset the chronograph. By the way, that lockout feature, that's how that works. It's got a slider, so if you are wearing it in the heat of battle at Le Mans, you can't accidentally fat finger a reset of a running chronograph. Use that slider to lock it out. Cool watch, fun piece, titanium 44 750-piece limited edition from 2006. Someday I will have the first gen Aston Martin Vanquish to go with it. But in the meantime, let me give a shout out to our friends who are joining us. I have Mike K, I have Tom Hung, I have Claudio joining us from downstairs, Santino N, Eric Nielsen, Robin Rickett, I can see Hachi Zenki joining us, Steve Pasco, Eddie Landsberg, Matt Forster, Mark Lisenby, and of course Edward Ledden from Sweden. All right, into the talking points. First things first, this or that, guys. We're bringing back two watches that have previously featured because we want to see how they've held up now that they've had most of a model year to run. Do we still love them just as much? Let's find out. Jason, here are your choices for tonight.
Shoot.
The Omega Seamaster Aqua Terra World Timer. This is the most exotic Omega Seamaster you can buy right now. It is a master chronometer, it is a world timer, it is made of platinum. It was a 87-piece special series to launch the new World Time complication. 43mm platinum, still 150 meters water resistant, so it's a true travel adventurer's watch. Platinum teak deck concept dial, so it's a platinum outer dial with applied yellow gold indices and matching 18-karat yellow gold hands. It has an enamel center dial featuring a projection of the globe. This thing is legitimately a high horology piece with an Omega badge. And advantage over the Chopard, it's easier to read the time on this one. As a world timer, I think the Chopard has the edge, but this one, it's easier to read the time of day. Now, I'll also say with an alligator strap, it has a full platinum and white gold deployant clasp. The Chopard has a pin buckle, so advantage Omega. I'll also say this, caliber 8939 60-hour power reserve, twin mainspring barrels. It does have hacking seconds. It does have world time. It does have a ridiculous 18-karat full free-sprung balance bridge. And it is the master chronometer, the new Métas standard, that is COSC Plus, a test of the fully cased-up watch. And I'll add 87 pieces. You're going to be paying just over $48,000 US for this one. Jason, here's your alternative. Chopard's first ever world time watch, also in platinum. It's the Chopard LUC Time Traveler 1. This is a watch that is 42mm, It is platinum. It is not a limited series, but on the basis of price and kind of LUC inside baseball spirit, it's not going to be one you see all the time. Greater elegance of line than the Omega. 1 millimeter difference in case size. It's a world of difference in thickness and elegance. Also, stunning Aegean blue dial. This is not that pandering sort of, I don't know, French racing blue that you see all over the place now, or the cobalt metallic. This is almost like a slate blue, and it's beautiful with a tinge of green and gray. Love that. Plus, it's easier to line up and read the world time on this watch than it is on the Omega. Caliber LUC 0105L, 60-hour power reserve, entirely hand-finished and made inside Chopard's manufacturer in Fleurier. It's a COSC chronometer. Gorgeous, and this watch has delightful details. The LUC and the geosphere style for the indications of which crown winds and sets the watch and which side sets the world time chapter ring. And finally, Jason, I'm almost out of air, but crown kerfs on the underside. You can see next to the crowns there are little recesses to let you dig your fingernails in under the crowns. Beautifully executed, beautifully thought out. This one with a double alligator strap. It does have a white gold pin buckle, so you're not getting a clasp. I think you probably should at this price, but at $35,910, you are paying less than the Omega. And there exists a sweet steel model that's all black and orange for $13,060. But you got to pick between platinum. Which one do you take?
So steel off the table. If I'm going platinum, I got to say I love Omega. They make some amazing stuff. There are many Omegas that I would own. This would not be the one. There's something about this dial configuration, this watch, just doesn't do it for me. Okay. And if I got to speak honestly to my heart, I've always loved the LUC Chopard. I think that model line has, given us a lot of value for the money over the years. And if you're going to go platinum blue, that piece really speaks to me. So while I don't, have the bank account for either one of these watches and probably wouldn't purchase either one, I'd go with the Chopard for me.
All right, I would have to say that, honestly, if you were to line up all of the selling points and say, point for point, which one's more technically advanced, which one's more artistically accomplished, I think on a points basis, the Omega would win a technical knockout or maybe a decision. But I'll also say that the Aqua Terra case in 43 millimeters is maybe a little bit too brutal for the delicacy of this dial. This watch would sell on the sophistication of the movement and the beauty of the dial. I'm not sure the rest of the package matches the on-paper appeal of the watch. I would say that I go with the Chopard 2 on the basis of elegance and that spectacular Aegean blue dial. I don't know if it's blue, gray, or green, but it's gorgeous. And I think we can agree on this. The Chopard wins. All right, so Edward Ledden mentioning that he finds the Omega more interesting, and I do. Intellectually, I find it a more interesting watch, especially since this is so different from the normal kind of watch Omega would make. It seems like every couple of years, they make like a bonkers platinum watch with a platinum dial and platinum thread, and they make somewhere between 6 and 100 of them. But Chopard takes it. All right, Jason, quick question. This is coming from McKinley Stevens, and he's asking, AP diver, this is the Royal Oak Offshore Diver, black dial, or do you go with a 15400, that's the standard Royal Oak 41 millimeter, with a white dial? Two different watches.
Yeah, totally different watches. I gotta say, maybe about 2.5 weeks ago, I would have answered 15400 all day long, and I would have left the diver on the table. But I spent about 45 minutes with the diver on my wrist about 2 weeks ago, and I have to say it's probably the most comfortable AP made. For the size of the watch and what it is, you wouldn't expect it, but when you hunker that thing down to your wrist, it sits nice and flush, it's comfortable, and I could totally see myself putting a diver in the collection. I do like the 15400. The white dial, though, probably not my optimal choice. I do like the black or the blue if you can find one, but that diver is so comfortable, and you do yourself a favor by going to try one on.
Absolutely. They are very different watches, and while they might not be all that far apart in terms of price, I do think that once you put the two on the wrist, the decision will make itself. That's the thing about trying two watches that fit and feel so dramatically different. The proof is going to be in the first-hand experience with both timepieces, preferably side by side. So a great note from Philip Sebastian Peterson, who's saying that if they took that 8939 world time movement and the platinum dial and the enamel center, and they put it in the Globemaster, they would have a winning watch. I gotta say, that is spot on. I didn't even think of it, but that is a watch that I think would have people lining up to buy. Everything the Globemaster should have been from the beginning, and also I think matching the elegance of the dial with a case to suit. All right, so moving through the comments, this one's from Edward Ledden. It's for you, Jason. Is there a chance that the Rolex GMT Batman will be discontinued in the future? Do we see any reason to suspect this?
In the future, how far out? I mean, 100% it'll be discontinued at some point. I don't think it's in the foreseeable future. I think the watch is really steady right now. Seems to be pretty strong, although we have seen kind of a downtick on the secondary market as of the last week or so. But I think eventually it'll be discontinued, such as Rolex. But for right now, the foreseeable future, probably not so much.
I would say they probably dial this one out of the catalog when they roll over to the next generation GMT Master. My feeling is next generation GMT Master, you're going to see three things. One, you're going to see the black and blue discontinued. Two, I want to say you're going to see a launch model using a Coke bezel. I think you're going to see a launch model using a Coke bezel. I also think you're going to see the final arrival of the Pepsi bezel in steel. So I think that's going to protect the people who bought this generation in white gold. There will never be an example of this generation GMT Master with a Pepsi bezel in steel. But the next generation, I think you're going to see a lot of shuffle in the types of bezels offered. You're going to see Pepsi, you're going to see Coke, and I think the GMT black and blue is going to go away. All right, so quick Instagram update, guys. I am doing the Instagram thing. I am Tim_Mosso on Instagram, and I try to keep my gallery fun and frequent. I don't overload you with images, but follow me on Instagram at Tim_Mosso, and you'll get to see at least, I'd say, 3 videos and 4 photos per week of the best of what we've got here at Watchbox, plus my own personal watches every once in a while. And because I'm wacky, I like to throw in occasional food and cars, plus whiskey. Back to our view, guys. Do we have a shot of my Instagram feed, just to give them a taste of what's in store? There it is. Okay, good stuff. And enough of that. We're good. All right. Viewer questions. Back to your queries. Mike K asks, what pre-ceramic sub would I recommend? He has a 6 1/3 inch, 16 centimeter wrist. He would like to buy a pre-ceramic sub. He's actually going to trade in his ceramic sub because he does not like the fit of it. It's big for his wrist, and he wants to know what pre-ceramic, with the note that he is looking at a Submariner no date 14060M post 2000. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's, if you've already gone the route of trying on the newer gen ceramic and it doesn't fit you well, I think the 14060 makes sense. The M, you know, you're going to pay for it. To get one, you might want to look back to some earlier examples, but I feel like the ceramic, you either love it or hate it. You know, I'm assuming that you love the watch since you're looking for a earlier version of it. I'm sure we have a couple suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think right there is your 2-line 14060. The 2-line was your pre-2006, 2007 model with the non-chronometer rated movement. The watch got most of the toys by the end, but I believe it was the last of the like hollow end link, hollow center link, perforated lug Rolex sports watches. It was really old school right up to the moment it disappeared at the end of 2011. You have a broad selection back to 1988 when it replaced the 5513. And with that in mind, I think some of my alternatives would be, consider, while they're still cheap, the uber rare and little recognized Submariner 168000. This is a watch that was made from, I don't know, 7 to 9 months in the late 80s, and it was during the rollover from the transitional reference 16800 to the later 16610. And what set this one apart is that it has the older movement, the 3035, with the newer case, the first of the 904L steel Submariners. Why is this important? Well, it's not necessarily from a functional standpoint, but in terms of rarity, this was the first 6-digit Submariner. It was the first 904L steel Submariner. It's the rarest steel Submariner of the 1980s, and it's a watch you can pick up right now with box and papers for under $8,000. So this is one of those opportunities where you're going to wish you bought 2 down the road. Also, you can buy a late Submariner 5513, the last of the There it is, the last of the 5513s. Granted, you're going to get a gloss dial with the white gold indices. You're not going to get a traditional printed matte dial for entry-level prices, but you can get a good late 5513 with a wonderful link to the era of Bund and all that legend and lore, and you can get it for a reasonable price. And I would say if you're willing to spend more, like if you've had new ceramic sub money, you might be able to get yourself a 5513 Tiffany dial, one of the late 80s watches with the Tiffany co-signed dial. Now, of course, Tiffany signed these themselves, so they were always a little bit of an aftermarket product, and they had a uneasy coexistence with their distributor rights vis-a-vis Rolex, which is why by the early 1990s, Tiffany signed Submariners were done. Tiffany lost its distributor rights to Rolex, and therefore these late 5513s, as well as the 14060 Tiffany dials from the early 1990s. These are also important because by 1994, the last of these had left the mothership, so to speak. So if you find a 1993, 1994, if you find a S or a W code Tiffany 14060, you've got a real collectible watch, especially if you have the original teal Tiffany packing box that came with it with the sales receipts and the proof of purchase. Finally, I would say the 666 Sea Dweller. This is a watch that I think you can still pick up all day long with gloss style and white gold indices for $7,000 to $8,000 US. You can't get the earlier matte dials. Those were already priced out of, I think, this price range for a viable alternative to a no-date ceramic sub. But still, the 666 is rare. It's an important transitional. It's a watch that's still priced accessibly and crossing the threshold into true vintage now that they've got 3 decades plus on them. I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to buy these for under $10,000. Plus, if you like the no-date sub, the absence of a magnifier on these pre-anniversary Sea Dwellers is quite becoming. Jason, do you have a pick from this litter?
I really like the pre-anniversary Sea Dwellers. You know, the 666 is probably my favorite. I guess it just depends. The Sea Dweller 4000, although it's ceramic, I guess kind of off topic, is probably my favorite watch of all time from Rolex. So I guess I'm partial to the ceramics.
Okay, so he's a Sea Dweller type of guy, which means that he's probably going to vote for the 666. My personal vote would be to try to find yourself a 14060 Tiffany on an investment basis. The one to wear for me would be the 168000 or the 666. I noticed a comment from Hachi Zenki, a longtime viewer and frequent contributor, asking, Tim, Jason, what do you guys think of the Singer Porsches? 6 figures for an air-cooled Porsche with less than 300 horsepower. Do you dig the Singers, Jason?
I think they're cool. I think it's more of a nostalgia thing. You know, is it the most bang for the buck? Probably not. But if it's something that really gets you going, if it's something that, you know, invokes some emotion, then I guess it makes sense. You can justify anything if you have the money, right? So.
I would say this. If you're wondering what the hell are we talking about Singer Porsches, there's this company in the United States out in California that takes air-cooled 911s, Porsche 911s, and it creates a sort of resto mod, which is a combination of modified and restoration. But the level of workmanship on these modified cars to bring them up to modern driving experience, almost jewel-like detailing. Like you look at a Singer Porsche Flat 6, this is the only automotive engine that I will say is finished on the level of like a Geneva Seal watch movement. These cars are jewels. And I will also say this, when you're talking about a car that weighs under 2,600 pounds, like an early 80s 911, cranked up to 300 horsepower, yeah, you can get a lot more horsepower for a lot less money today, but you cannot buy a more visceral driving experience. This is white knuckle, this is sweaty palms, this is heart palpitations in something that physically looks every penny of what you pay. So I would say if you don't know Singer Porsche, open another window, stay with us, and take a look. I think you'll like what you see, unless you're just like a dyed-in-the-wool BMW guy, and I can't help you then. All right, so moving through our questions tonight, Michael D asks, why do my JLCs and Rolexes hack, that is stop seconds? You can pull the crown and stop the seconds hand. But my AP, my Audemars Piguet, my Patek Philippe, and my Vacheron Constantin do not hack. Why is this? Why would $30,000 watches not hack? There must be some method to the madness. Please advise. Okay, well, let's talk about the most notorious case, Patek Philippe. Most of their movements do not feature hacking or stop seconds. This is because Patek has a lot of architectures that have been around for a long time. This year is the 40th anniversary of the caliber 240 micro rotor. It dates back to 1977. It's never hacked. The caliber 315, which was the Patek center rotor automatic that replaced the 335 and the 310s during the 1990s. It was not constructed with a hacking mechanism. When it became the 324 in 2006, it still did not have a hacking mechanism. And the 215 manual, which has been around since the 70s, it did not have a hacking mechanism as originally created. All of these movements are still in the catalog, grandfathered in, and they're all over the place. You'll find them in the latest Aquanauts and Nautilus, as well as across the Calatravas. And I have to say that as long as they are in the catalog, they will not hack. That said, in the modern era, you can find some Patek movements, for example, that hack. For instance, the 31260 REG in the 5235G white gold regulator, that hacks. The 29535 in the 5170 chronograph, that hacks. That's, you know, a watch that came out 6 model years ago, though. The 5959 split-second chronograph, it's a grand complication, all 33 millimeters of it. The caliber 27525 does hack, and that has been in the catalog since all of 2005. Hacking movements are kind of a new thing at Patek Philippe, and the same kind of grandfathered calibers exist in all other catalogs. I will say the odd thing for me was when I received the Generation 3 Vacheron Overseas and they didn't hack. I did notice that. It seemed a little odd, but I think that's VC looking sideways at the other big Geneva Seal former Geneva Seal devotee over in Mayran. Patek and Vacheron shadowing each other. I think the new VCs should have hacking. They don't. C'est la vie. You buy what's beautiful. What do you think, Jason? Force of habit?
Yeah, I mean, I would go out of my way to say that non-hacking hacking is not going to make or break the sale of a watch for me. If it has it, great. If it doesn't, I'll live with it. I make it a sport. I try and you know, narrow down the exact second and make it a game. But you know, I shouldn't say that you should go out of your way to make a decision on a watch whether or not the second hacks.
Yeah, for me it's not important. For the most part, you can still figure out a way to synchronize. Okay, you just kind of back the minute hand up, keeping it at the index until the seconds hand passes 12. It's not the biggest thing in the world. I think on a sports watch like a Rolex, chronometer certification as well as the ability to synchronize to a reference like a dive timer or a flight timer, things like that have always been important. And so on that basis, it's been something germane to the Rolex catalog for a really long time, generally across all model lines since the early to mid 70s. So I think it's something that should be universal at this point, but I understand legacy movements, why it's not included. All right. Comment from Trevor Phillips saying, Aston Martins have been disappointing to him lately. The new Vantage looks like something unmentionable, and the DB11 looks dated to him, even though it just came out. I have to say, the Vantage, I don't love the German engine. I think there are enough AMGs in the world. They're wonderful cars. I don't think a British car needs to morph into that. And the DB11, I gotta disagree with you. That thing is sexy. That's just an awesome looking car. Not as muscular as the original Vanquish, but that's a nice looking machine. All right, moving on. I think we got a question from AH. Okay, guys, what dial color for Sky Dweller? You can now get the mostly steel Sky Dweller with a silver, black, and a blue dial. Jason, for $14,500, which one do you pick?
I gotta be honest. Market says blue, but if you put a blue one in your hand, it just doesn't do it for me. It's not my tone of blue. I think it's a little bit forced. I gotta say, I saw the silver in person, put it on my wrist, and it's gorgeous. In person, I go with the silver dial.
Judgment call. Is blue through for 2018?
I don't think it's done. I think there are certain types of blue that really, really do it, and this is not one of them. I do think that blue is going to change a little bit next year, and we're going to see some more accents and a little bit more of a lighter pastel type of blue. I think the dark, rich blues are kind of done.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There.
I think there are some blues that are forever. For example, Rolex, whether you call it glacier blue or ice blue on the platinum models, yes, that is forever. It will always be special. It will always be rare. Most companies will still reserve some form of blue for platinum editions, and that's kind of how it should be. I think you should always offer a silver and a black dial and steel, but blue should be an occasional and very special thing. It's not played out, and it will always be desirable, but I would like to see more imagination, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see blue migrate into gray. If we start to see what Chopard did with the Time Traveler 1, where blue slowly becomes slate, and then slate becomes gray.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's important that these brands kind of realize what they're doing to the market and don't overpopulate the color. You know, a lot of times it's just a rush to beat your competitor to the next blue dial or the next trend. And I think if they take a step back and really cherish the blue for what it is, then it's something that we could see for a couple years.
Austin, I want to thank you for the shout out in the chat box saying he likes the shirt and he likes the glasses. Thank you so much. This is me. This is me on camera and off camera. I hate it when I go to headquarters and they're like, you should look at these guys from Hodinkee. They're so hip. I'm like, yeah, they're also clones. Okay? We're not doing Dolly the sheep here. Watch guy or no. You have no style and therefore you have style, or you're simply following the herd. That's how I feel. Jason and I both. This is us as we are and will always be. All right, so questions continuing. Jason, watch these guys so we can hang on to their questions as we work our way through the talking points. Sure. But Dave T discovered a new IWC and he wants to share his glee. Dave T, take it away. He just ran into this watch at the IWC boutique in Costa Mesa, California. Okay, I didn't know they had a Costa Mesa, California IWC boutique, but that watch you're looking at, folks, blew him away. He loved its presence, he loved its complications, especially the bezel that you can squeeze and use to alter the local time per world time, world wandering. All right. He wants to know a little bit more about this watch and what I think of it. Well, first, let's talk about where this watch came from. This model is a 46mm stainless steel timepiece. It's got a travel time function. It was launched as part of the Year of the Pilot's Watch at SIHH 2016, and technically it is the IWC reference 3950-01. Now that you know the reference, you can go look it up. But let me say that the original concept was invented back in the early 2000s by AHCI independent master Thomas Prescher, and he's best known for the triple-axis tourbillon that he created in the late 1990s. He, in turn, sold the patent to Michael Vogt of Vogard Watches, who brought it to Baselworld in 2004, and in 2015, while continuing to produce his own version within Vogard Watches, Michael Vogt sold the patent on a licensing basis to IWC, which now employs the patent in the Timezoner chronograph. So the watch you're looking at is $11,900 US. It's about the size of a big Pilot at 46mm, but it is a big, thick cheeseburger of a watch. This is not fitting under a cuff. It's probably not even fitting underneath a snowblower jacket. Big timepiece, highly visible, highly legible, highly functional. What I love is that the ceramic bezel has both an indication for which of the 24 time zones employ daylight savings time via reference city, and it allows you to change the local time without resorting to the crown. The other nice thing about it is it's still an IWC 89,000 chronograph base, so you get the 68-hour power reserve, the Peloton winding system, the hacking seconds, the flyback functionality, and the automatic winding convenience. This is a great watch that is probably the wackiest pilot watch IWC offers, and I would have to say for under $12,000, you're getting a formidable amount of inventive watchmaking if you can wear it. So Dave T, thanks for the shout out. I'm sure many were thinking what you were thinking. What is this wacky watch and where did it come from? Okay, so we have a question. This is a great Jason question because he's the kind of dude who would wear one of these. Hachi Zenki asks, why are Bund straps so polarizing and yet NATO's are almost universally loved? Both came from a military background. Jason, first kind of explain what a Bund strap is.
So a Bund strap is those giant leather backings that you see on some of these more military-esque, like the Zenith Type 20 watches or even some of the Bell & Rosses and stuff. So it's essentially a leather strap that has a secondary leather piece underneath the watch that sits on your wrist, kind of like a cuff strap. And I don't know that I would wear one. I don't know what it says about me that you think that I would wear one. They're cool looking. If it were me, let's say I bought that watch and it had the strap, I'd probably take the Bund off and just wear the strap. But I think NATO's are kind of universally loved because they're comfortable, they're first to market as far as they're widely accepted as an alternate strap. They're easy to get, there's a lot of different colors, it's easy to express yourself with that strap option. The Bund straps are, you know, I guess if it's your thing, it's like anything. There's fashion. It's not for me.
So the original purpose of a Bund strap, guys, was for pilots who are operating at ultra high altitude, and the idea was that because of thermal radiation, they could conceivably have like a 400-degree watch on their wrist. So instead of just having a big leather strap, there was a big leather strap with a leather, like a contact pad 3 times the size of the watch that would run under the watch and isolate their skin. So here's the thing. Nato straps, they look kind of cool. They're minimalist. They're stripped down. A Bund strap, on the other hand, is maximalist. It's huge. You go from a little bit offbeat with the Nato, which is, say, the equivalent of like a polka dot tie that you wear to the office, with the Nato, and then to the Bund. The Bund is like the polka dot bow tie that you wear to the office. Just maybe crossing that line to weird. It's functional, but below 30,000 feet, it's awfully difficult to justify, and it's big and it's stiff. It makes your watch wear 8 times its normal size. So that's why. All right. So Jason, keep watching the chat box and call out the questions as they come, guys. We're trying to honor as many of your live questions as possible today. It's a bit of a trial run, but my idea is to make this show as interactive as possible, and I need my external brain to be my wingman here, Bund strap or no. All right, moving on through our chat comments. Okay, this is my standard JLC disclaimer. Yeah, guys, I know, drink, and drink well, not crap. I want to know that it's at least single batch. But here's the thing. I'm going to answer one JLC question per show so that this doesn't become the Tim Mosso JLC love-in. And I also want to make sure that if I answer one question, it's an interesting question that has broad appeal to our larger audience. So we had a special shout out. Comment in the chat box below, by the way, if you like this feature. Comment, and this is a shout out to a wrist shot viewer who sent us his own wrist shot. So this is a regular viewer and correspondent, RS, who discussed his interest in a JLC Master Compressor Extreme Lab 2 GMT Sports Chronograph with me. And, well, he pulled the trigger. He pulled the trigger, and he actually bought the watch. I said, send me a wrist shot, and I'll throw it up on the show. And there you go. This is the big watch that wears even on a smaller wrist. I have a small wrist. He has a small wrist. The watch fits. It wears well. It wears light, even though it's a hulking monster of a timepiece. And I'll also say, judging by the other shot he sent me, he has incredible trust in his dog. All I have to say is I've never had a dog that I trust with a $50,000 watch, and this dog right here makes Lassie look like a heroin-addicted surrogate parent. Like, this is the most reliable companion you can ever know in life. Congratulations, RS, on your watch and an unbelievably faithful companion animal. That dog is a bro. All right. Do you want to see your wrist shot on the show? Send your wrist shot to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com. Send me your name. I won't use your full name, but I'm going to throw up your abbreviated name and your wrist shot. I don't care what you collect. Doesn't have to be JLC. Send me your passion picture in pixel form, and I will throw it up on here. All right. Viewer questions continued.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
So Joe S. says, hi, Tim. Should I worry if a lateral clutch column wheel chrono starts, when he starts the chronograph, that it jumps a few seconds when he starts the watch?
No, and it's just a consequence of having a clutch where 2 sets of wheels with teeth that are imperfectly aligned mesh. It's like when you have gears in your car, if you have a manual transmission car, you have the synchro mesh to help them mesh more smoothly, but there's still a little bit of a jump. You can feel when the engagement happens. It's the same thing with a lateral clutch. You have 2 wheels and they mesh, and in that moment when they align with each other, when one basically slides into the mesh with the other, there's a little bit of a jump of the hand. This is a necessity. There have been attempts to minimize via almost leaf spring-like teeth. Patek has tried it. FP Journe tried it with THA. But the bottom line, this is like the death of King Joffrey here. I'm like suffocating.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what it is that if you try and mitigate too much slop and things become very rigid, then you run the course of breaking gears and pinions. So the slop that's in there is necessary evil for the life of the piece.
Yeah, and here's the reason you don't have that with a vertical clutch is because if you can imagine top hat cymbals where they immediately close, it's like that. The vertical clutch closes immediately, so there's no play. It's either closed or it's open, and therefore the hand begins immediately, and that's also the reason why With a lateral clutch, you don't want to leave the mechanism engaged continuously because the meshing of separate trains will slowly wear it down. And most lateral clutches do not feature jeweled wheels, so you have a system that doesn't just age, but it ages at an accelerated rate because it's not jeweled. Very few are jeweled. All right. By the way, guys, I think I need my own drinking game today, and I gotta give a shout out to my crew. They've got my back. This is where we need product placement. This needs to be like, Dasani filtered spring water by reverse osmosis, the only choice of Watchbox Studios.
Well, surely we would have to find a Swiss water brand to bring in.
That's right. What do they have at SIHH? I don't know, but we're going to bring it back. We're going to make that a regular. We're going to have product placement. It's going to be like the Who Sells Out, but with our show. All right. So moving down, we got a few more questions and comments. Question from Philip Hayden: any vintage quartz tag Heuer worth buying? That's a great question.
Yeah, there's a few of the vintage Octavia stuff that's obviously skyrocketed on the secondary market. I don't know if I would say worth buying. I mean, if it pulls at your heartstrings and it's something that you have wanted for a long time and you like it, I would say, try and find a nice example of one. Vintage tag seems to be the only kind of tag that's really blown up, except for some of the newer stuff that we're seeing with some of the new movements. But the Octavias, I think, are the kind of the only thing, and some of the vintage Monzas.
I will say this: the Caliber S, if you can find older tag Heuer with the Caliber S from about 10 to 15 years ago, that was one of the most complicated quartz movements ever created, and it was legitimately of horological interest. So if you can find a tag Heuer with a Caliber S, you found something that is much more sophisticated, much more handmade, and much more distinctive than almost any other quartz you're going to find. That, in my opinion, is up there with stuff like Grun Seiko and Seiko Spring Drive. A genuinely interesting iteration of the quartz oscillator. Not electromechanical, but a very fascinating piece, and in my opinion, collectible. Also serviceable. All right. So, questions coming through. Would you go with a two-tone GMT Master 16713 root beer versus gold bezel black dial? Would you go with a root beer versus gold bezel black dial? Do you like the root beer? I guess that's the question. Does it make the watch by itself?
I like the root beer dial. I don't know that I'm not on eBay trying to find one. It's a cool watch. We get them from now, time and time again. They seem to be well received by some Rolex guys. It's pretty classic. The nipple dials seem to be, a root beer nipple dial on a bracelet two-tone. It's a pretty cool watch. I think we just got one recently. It's a cool piece. It wouldn't end up in my watch box.
Yeah, I'm not nuts for the root beer. I would actually go with the gold dial and the black bezel. To me, that's a punchy combination. That's got a lot of visual impact, and I think you get the most. I think you get the most striking watch possible in about a 40mm case. All right, so we're going to conclude with a this or that, as asked by a viewer. It's Audemars Piguet versus Vacheron Constantin Steel Sports Watch Edition. All right, Michael D., previously mentioned in this episode, asks, should I get a new Royal Oak Chrono steel blue face or the new third generation Vacheron Constantin Overseas stainless steel with blue dial? He's leaning toward VC because of the in-house Geneva seal movement, the larger size, and the quick change straps. He asks our thoughts. Let me give a quick rundown, and I'm going to let the man here decide because he's the sports watch purist, not I. Audemars Piguet Royal Oak 26331 ST. Okay, 41mm, 11mm thick. Solid case back. This is a $24,300 watch. Holds its value nicely. Stainless steel, full bracelet. What you're paying for with this watch is the thinness of it, the fineness of the Frédéric Piguet integrated chronograph movement, which is not in-house but is beautifully made, and you're paying for the finishing of the bezel of the case of the bracelet. With the Royal Oak, I cannot overemphasize, you're paying for the finishing of the outside of the watch. And caliber 2385 is column wheel, vertical clutch, automatic, very thin, nicely made. It belongs in a watch at this price point. That said, 50 meters water resistant, and Vacheron Constantin has an alternative that is compelling. The Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph, Generation 3, reference 5500, stainless steel, 42.5 millimeters, 13.7 millimeters thick. It is noticeably thicker than the Audemars Piguet, and it wears much larger, not 1.5 millimeters larger. But it comes with a bracelet, it comes with a rubber strap, it comes with a leather strap, and it has quick release lugs so you can swap them with nothing but your thumbnail. In-house caliber 5200, 54-hour power reserve, display case back, unlike the Royal Oak, water resistant to 150 meters and anti-magnetic. This is a column wheel chronograph movement you can see with Geneva hallmark. Jason, this watch is $30,300. $30,300 versus $24,300. Which watch do you take?
I gotta be honest, it's a tough one. My heart says the VC. It just makes all the sense. I like the Gen 2 better than the Gen 3 personally, but if you look at, if you line them up and you do all the points, the AP is, in my opinion, a prettier watch. I think on the wrist it has more presence, but the VC, for what it is internally, it makes more sense. You're getting a little bit more bang for the buck, I would say. The secondary market on the AP is going to be a little stronger. The VC is my pick if you're just buying something to add to the collection. You're not worried about the secondary value.
Now, let me ask you a question. I've heard that the market for the VC, as they've balanced supply better in the second year of the model line, that the third generation watch in steel, especially with the blue dial, has really taken off. Like it's night and day, 2016 to 17.
Yeah,
is that true?
It's a significant improvement, and I think that this is something that we'd like to see a lot of brands do, is really pay attention to supply and demand and how they distribute product, and basically where the secondary market goes. The Gen 3, there's nothing wrong with the watch. It's a fantastic piece. The secondary market has certainly improved on it. I personally prefer the aesthetic of the Gen 2, and I think that there's better deals to be had, obviously since the watch has been out a little bit longer, but the Gen 3 is a great watch, and again, you're getting the bracelet, the rubber strap, the leather strap. Packaging's really nice, got the weird box.
Yeah.
It's a cool watch.
It's an amazing watch. I would say intellectually, it's almost like the this or that we started with. The Omega probably wins on the basis of technical refinement and an exquisite dial. Like if you were to just stack the features check by check, box by box, the Omega probably beat the Chopard at the beginning of the feature. And I think on paper, the Vacheron wins this battle just by sheer weight of features. But from an emotional standpoint, an elegance standpoint, an historic standpoint, the Royal Oak comes roaring back, and let's face it, we buy what pulls our heartstrings. That's a gorgeous watch, and I think it's unanimous. It's the Royal Oak for both of us. All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. You nearly watched our first on-air casualty with that choking episode. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, lateral clutches and vertical clutches. Don't mess around with this at home, folks. I'm a professional. Thanks everyone who joined us. I want to thank Jason for joining me, my crew who saved me from the choking fit with this Swiss spring water, and of course everyone who tuned in from around the world. If you got up early, if you stayed up late, that thanks goes double. I'm Tim, he's Jason. This is Watchbox Studios. Don't forget to comment in the box below. Tell me what you liked, tell me what worked, what didn't work, and remember, follow me, Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Thanks for logging on.